everyone, and welcome back to another episode. I am Morgan Melnicki, Director of Social Media and Marketing at Sentinel Media Company, and today I have with me two very dedicated staff members to an organization that holds a special place in my heart, Marianne and Heather. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
You are welcome. Thanks
Absolutely.
for having us.
Thanks for having us.
So the Heart Association is obviously such an important organization in our community in the Mohawk Valley. Talk about a little bit how each of you got involved and your background, where you started, and how you got this position to be at the Heart Association.
Why don't you go first, Marianne?
Sure. So I spent the first part of my career actually in media and marketing and advertising, and it was really after the pandemic, I was like, I need to do something different. Like I wanted to do something that made a real impact, but I wanted to be intentional about it. So I took my time, and then this position with the Heart Association opened up, and it's a mission that is so personally important to me that it was such a perfect fit. I don't think I could have found another job that fit so perfectly and checked all the boxes that I was looking to check.
Yeah, and what about you, Heather? How did you make your way to Heart Association?
You know, it's interesting. I have a background in medical device sales, grew up wanting to be a physician. So taking care of people and trying to find a way to make a difference is something that I grew up with a drive to do. I spent a little time at the ARC Oneida Lewis. Helping people with disabilities is an important part of my core values. But when I was called to take this position, it was actually by the previous executive director, Christine, who was a friend of mine, and our daughters are friends. And she said, Heather, I think you should try to look at my job. And she had gone back to UU and had been there for a while. And I was really flattered that she thought to call me, and spoke through with her why she thought it might be a better fit for me. And she was right. And I'm so glad that she saw that and encouraged me to take a look at this, because I look at this position at the Heart Association. And I should take a moment just to remind people that in our mission, there's nothing to do with the heart. Our mission is to be a relentless force for longer, healthier lives. So that to me is so all-encompassing and offers a spot from which to dive into a variety of different issues in our community and help out. So I look at my role as kind of an inflection point to make change in our community.
And obviously the Heart Association is a national organization. Can you talk about some of the initiatives that you are doing here locally, things in our backyard that many people might not know about?
Yeah, and just for point of fact, because I think it's interesting, it's actually an international organization now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so a lot of people don't realize that, because it still retains that American Heart Association / American Stroke Association, one and the same. And we try not to forget those people who are survivors from stroke as well. It's 101 years old, so we just celebrated our 100th birthday last year. And while we work on an international, national, and regional level, for us, the most important thing to talk about is what's happening locally. And I like to think of it with an acronym that I kind of created, RACE. We're doing research locally. Some of those investments are going to MMRI, which I love MMRI, and Maria sits on my board, so I'm really fortunate to have a really nice relationship with her. Advocacy. So that's locally and that's statewide as well. Things like anti-vaping legislation, free and healthy school meals, our community impact work. That's when we think about our hands-only CPR out in the community, our blood pressure work, and then education. How are we educating our community on being more healthy? How are we educating students? How are we impacting young people through schools? So all of those things really come together to feel that impact here locally in our community.
And with having to having education programming for so many different demographics, how do you tailor that throughout the community?
I am a huge fan of our youth market program and the Kids Heart Challenge. And as a parent, I'd never seen, the presentation or the assembly that the kids go through. So when I first started, my children were in elementary school at Westmoreland Road. So I went with our youth market director. And so to see how they talk about like the core things that make you healthy in a way that resonates with kids. They use a child survivor. So it's somebody that they can relate to because it's somebody that's around their age. And then they do this whole like campaign, and they have all these little boxes they have to tick with physical activity. One of the other ones is, being kind and doing something nice for other people. So it covers all these things that encompass health as a whole and really sets kids up with the information on how to be healthy throughout their whole life. And then so to seeing it at the middle school level, and this is probably one of my favorite events to go to for my kids, what they do with Whitesboro Middle School, and again, I can speak from my own experience, they do a kickball tournament, and it is for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and these kids are into it. And the teachers are so intentional about mixing the team. So it's not like all these 8th graders against like 6th graders. So it's even. And you see all these kids who maybe aren't friends, who maybe wouldn't know each other, like come together because they want to win this kickball tournament. Like it's, and to see how many kids are involved and how involved the teachers are. Like it's such a fun time. And it's also giving them the opportunity to give back to their community in a way that is feasible for them.
Right. And it's also an early, that's that early touch point of them learning about heart association and all that you guys offer. Obviously, so many people are familiar with the Heart Run Walk. We know that that's such an important and popular event in our community. Besides that, how is the Heart Association, how are you guys touching or raising awareness daily for our community besides like the walk?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And when you talk about the walk, hypercapitalization on that because we were the first.
Yeah.
So I think that that's really cool. And most of the people that are listening and watching right now probably know that you play a huge role as a volunteer for us, chairing the Radiothon and the Treadmill Challenge. And that's really how it all got started. So I can't restate that enough because the more people I talk to, the more people I find out don't recognize that we were the first walk ever for the American Heart Association. And for me, I'm all about building that community pride. And I think that that's something that we should really be proud of, that impact. But that walk is only one day a year, or 2 days a year in our case. And our Go Red Luncheon is only 1 day a year. And we are not doing our due diligence if people aren't seeing us throughout the year. So that impact, to Marianne's point, is felt every day in our youth market, year-round, when we are in schools teaching kids ways to be healthy, both from a physical aspect as well as a mental and a social, emotional well-being aspect. It's when we do our outreach into the community. So, for example, I have a Get to Know the AHA on May 16th that I'm partnering with the Chamber on.
Oh, awesome.
To really give people that background, find out ways they can be engaged.
Where is that happening?
That's going to be at the Greater Utica Chamber of Commerce.
Okay.
It's going to be like a little breakfast meeting. You heard it here first. It hasn't been announced yet.
Okay.
Spoiler alert. But I'm really excited about that because when I took this role, I did find that people only thought of us for those 2 days a year. And so it has been a bit of a paradigm shift over this past year to try to find ways to be more present in the community. So some of the things we've done are examples like Hoops and Dreams basketball tournament, going and attending that basketball tournament in Cornhill, teaching people how to do hands-only CPR, doing blood pressure readings, really partnering with some of our community partners like Dr. Jones, who's fantastic, and really finding those different ways we can engage throughout the year. So today, for example, we are taking members of our Circle of Red, which is a group of women who are like-minded and want to support the mission, and we are celebrating National Walking Day, which is today, and taking a walk at Proctor Park. And again, as part of that cross-functional engaging with the community, we have Gina Pierce from Green Utica hosting that tour.
Perfect. And I think that's an awesome way, just something simple that people can get involved in. And it's so cool to see that you're doing the meet and greet. I didn't realize that was happening, so very cool. And I can make sure we plug that
Thank you
later.
very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Can we talk more about the walk? I know that that's such an important time in our community. Talk about how much, and we know we raised a significant amount of money, how much money was raised, how that money will be used, hopefully touching on that local aspect, and just what were your favorite memories from this year's walk?
Yeah, so this is my second time overseeing the walk as the executive director. Prior to that, I participated in the walk in an attempt to run the 18 miles. That was an ill-fated attempt where I'm pretty sure I felt the chase car pushing me along on my rear end.
But you completed it.
But I completed it. I survived. I think I shed a few tears as I came to the finish because I was so glad that I survived.
I think I would be too.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. There is nothing I like to talk about more than the walk, to be honest with you. So that is a really loaded question you just asked me. Because it was the first, it's magical. It holds this mythology. When I attended my first AHA regional meeting last year, which was the entire Eastern States Division, and I had been on the job for 2 weeks, and I stood up in front of the room because I had to introduce myself, and I said, I'm Heather, and I'm from Utica. There was a hush that fell over the room, and I wasn't sure why. And I thought, okay, maybe they've heard some of the things about Utica that are less than flattering. And maybe I'm going to get some pushback, or I'm going to hear, where's Utica? And I'm going to have to reference it to Syracuse, or we're only a few hours north of New York City, or do you know where the Adirondacks are? Any of those things that we tend to use as qualifiers. But the hush that fell over the room was because every single one in that room used our Utica Heart Walk as the measuring stick by which they measure their own walks. Because we were the first to raise $1 million towards our mission. We were the first to have over 10,000 walkers. We were the first ever. We are the only ones that have a radiothon. We are the only ones that have our own personal swag. And perhaps my favorite is we are the only ones that have a special name, America's Greatest Heart Run and Walk. So I try to take it next level, and I do send some of that swag to some of the fellow executive directors who don't have the privilege of having their own swag, just to rub it in a little bit.
Say, how sweet of you.
But it is a really busy 2 days. What's unique, and one of the questions you asked, encapsulated in that massive questions, was how much money did we raise? And that's always a really tough question to answer because we're still counting. Money still comes in up to 6 weeks afterwards. But in that day of when we have the radiothon on Expo Day and people are coming in to register, whereas in other areas of the country, a lot of times most of that is done on computers, and I would say 99% of that is done on computers, and people are doing all their fundraising that way. For Utica, we're still old school. We want to hand over that cash. We want to hand over that check. We're proud of it, and we want to come in. We want to get our finisher pin. We want to get our incentive, and we want to see all our friends and family and community members. So we have a lot of stuff on paper to count. But we're somewhere around $500,000, which I'm really proud of. I think of it as 500,000 individual little dollars marching along in my mind, making a difference in the health of our community and in the health of, the world.
Yeah, which, I mean, that's phenomenal, especially for such a push over,
Yes.
I mean, really those 2 days are like the strong days. And it really is such obviously for us, an exhausting day, but it's so energetic.
Yes.
And you can feel it both at the expo and then the next day at the walk. It's like, it's never ending for like 48 hours, which I'm so glad to be a part of, because it really is, once you're standing on that stage and welcoming people and waving them off to start their walk, like there's no better feeling. I know we have a bunch of Red Cap ambassadors that are survivors. Marianne, can you talk a little bit about specific examples of how you've seen the Heart Association save lives?
I think that our most recent Red Cap ambassador, Ann Ferner, is probably the poster child for that. We talk, especially with hands-only CPR, like we've been trying to get at least one person, every household trained in hands-only CPR. I don't remember a lot of statistics like off the top of my head, but this is one that is like driven into my brain all the time, that 70% of cardiac arrest happens outside of a hospital. 90% of those people do not survive because they don't receive bystander care. There isn't somebody there that knows, okay, I can do these compressions, I can do this. They don't know what to do. So, and it's also like an example of like one of those kismet things. Like they were at St. Mary's Church in New York Mills, and they usually went to, I believe, a later mass, but they had something they were doing in the afternoon, so they went to an earlier mass and went into cardiac arrest. Now, if you know New York Mills, St. Mary's Church is here. That fire department is literally maybe 60 seconds down the road. And because it's so volunteer driven, the alarm goes off. And then the volunteers, wherever they are, have to get their stuff together, get to
Timing,
the fire department, get on the rig. So it took them, I believe, about 10 minutes to get to her. And you
15 minutes.
15?
15
so you
minutes.
wouldn't think it would take that long. And in that church that day were an EMT and a nurse and people who were trained to save her life. And so when we look at on a community level, Heather went through this recently.
And I'm going to call back to her, but
and As a child, I watched my mother save my grandmother with CPR. Like I watched her go into cardiac arrest, drop, and it is something that will, if you see something
You're
like that,
touched, yeah.
it will forever be imprinted on my brain
Right.
as a 9-year-old child. So the way we can impact our local community is by doing these hands-only CPR demonstrations, because it is such a transferable skill. It is doing the compressions and keeping someone going until that those emergency responders are there. I think people are hesitant with mouth to mouth. I think COVID really put a shine on that, because then people got nervous.
Yeah.
So as the AHA sets the resuscitation guidelines, their science, people way smarter than me figured this out, that doing compressions alone is enough to keep someone going until those emergency responders get there, because you're pumping that oxygen, the oxygen through the body, through the blood, to keep them alive. And what an impact it is when someone you have the ability to save somebody's life, somebody you don't know, because you went to, the Heart Walk Expo and learned hands-only CPR there, or your employer brought the AHA in to give that hands-only CPR demo. That is just one of those things that we do out in the community that you don't realize makes such a huge impact until it happens.
Yeah, and it sounds like, I mean, you have your why when you were 9 years old. I mean, just experiencing that is insane.
Yes.
And Heather, I do want to touch on your experience, but I don't know that I even share this with either of you. But when Anne was she came on the radio to talk about her whole experience.
Yeah.
Somehow the stars aligned, and the person that helped,
nurse's daughter, right?
the nurse's daughter, yes, that helped her that day was on the treadmills during the time of her explaining her experience. And we made this connection as it was happening, like not planned. And I think that was like the most, like, I think that was a time of that day that I was like, holy crap, this connection is why we are all here. Like it was so moving, and just that, like I said, the stars aligned, that everyone was in the same place, that like she got to experience that. And I think this was a first time walker, so she didn't even know what she was getting herself into for treadmill challenge, yet alone having the person that her mom literally saved their life talking about her experience while she's doing it. I think that was like
the most, I mean, I'm getting goosebumps right now remembering that moment, Morgan, and how happy Ann Ferner was to be able to hug her.
Yeah.
And
they were like hanging out
I mean, it was
afterwards.
like it gets me a little choked up. It was so magical. It was awesome.
That was probably my favorite part of the day, honestly. But Heather, I know that you've also had an experience similar to this. You've chatted about it, the rest stop. I would love for you to share that story, because I do think it's very touching.
So just when you think you're prepared, and I've spent this past year or so trying to educate as many people as possible in hands-only CPR. So that they can buy that time, so they can be turned from bystanders into lifesavers. But it was December 30th, and I was headed to Syracuse with my daughter and her friends to celebrate my daughter's 16th birthday. And we pulled over into the rest area because they wanted Chick-fil-A for lunch. Not super heart-friendly, as a disclaimer to those that are listening.
You can get heart healthy choices there.
There you go. So they're 16. We pull in. It's pouring. If you remember, like late December wasn't the winter wonderland that we had all of February and early March. And as we pulled in, I looked towards the entrance and I saw a man on the ground. So my immediate thought, because it was right next to the curb and he was in the parking lot, like the driving portion of the parking lot, was he must have twisted his ankle. So I grabbed a sweatshirt that I had and an umbrella, and I raced out thinking I could kind of triage this injury. By the time I got over to him, a bunch of other people had gathered around him, and it became immediately apparent that he was in cardiac arrest. 2 gentlemen knelt beside him and rolled him over to his back. A woman called 911, and I ran inside to get the AED. When we teach people how to do hands-only CPR, we keep it very simple. The first thing is taking the victim and shaking them. Are you okay? Are you okay? Confirming that they are not alive. Basically, they're in cardiac arrest. They're not responsive. We then say very specifically, so that there's no confusion, you, and if you know the name, Morgan, call 911. Marianne, get the AED. We're very methodical. It's the one time you get carte blanche to be the biggest boss you want to be. That happened exactly as it was supposed to. Those guys started compressions. This young woman called 911. I went and got the AED. It was all in concert, exactly as it was supposed to happen. As I'm helping get the AED on and as we're analyzing whether or not he needs a shock, I look up and there's 24 people all around looking completely hopeless because they did not know what to do.
Yeah.
So to feel paralyzed by that fear and that just shock of seeing someone lying there with who knows how many chances to survive, we continued to work on him. His wife, unfortunately, at that point came out of the bathroom. She had been in the restroom and started calling out his name. And I will never forget that. Hearing her just say his name over and over again, louder and louder, as she tried to call him back from wherever he was. The Madison County ambulance crew responded very quickly. For those of you who have had the opportunity to learn how to do compressions, it seems pretty easy when you practice it for 30 seconds. But when you are doing it for minutes
It's a
at a
workout.
time, it's a workout and it's really hard and it's exhausting physically and it's also very exhausting mentally. The ambulance crew, hats off. They responded. They were the epitome of professionalism, and they got to work and they got this gentleman into the ambulance right away and whisked him off. I don't know what happened to him, but my 16-year-old daughter put it best because you can imagine afterwards there's just this like letdown of emotion. And I stumbled inside the rest area where my daughter and her 2 friends were waiting, and my daughter said, "Mom, you did everything you could do. Thank God you were there."
You were in the right place at the right time.
I was in the right place
Yeah.
at the right time. So it was incredibly moving, incredibly humbling, and incredibly inspiring to say, I'm in the right place in the broader sense, and I need to keep working hard at teaching people how to do this and encouraging them to enhance their education too. So I will say, just to pivot off of that, I just got officially CPR certified last
Awesome.
week. So hands-only CPR is a transferable skill that we can teach the layperson. CPR and first aid certification is a whole next step, which was offered at the Utica Zoo. And so I took advantage of that new service that they had.
Awesome.
And had a fantastic experience.
So, and I guess to roll off of that, you mentioned that you go to, I didn't realize this, but you go to workplaces and you'll do hands-only CPR. Is this a service?
Yeah. So because of meeting Ann Ferner a little over a year ago, when she made me cry in the Boulevard Diner by sharing her story with me for the first time. I think I've cried in the Boulevard Diner every time I've been there. There's always a story and there's always a reason to shed tears, whether they're happy, sad, or, wistful in this job. And we took it upon ourselves to really get creative with how we're doing that outreach. So I've done hands-only CPR at a Weight Watchers. We've gone to a retirement community. As I mentioned, we've done Hoops and Dreams. Those are just some of the places. We also partner with our sponsors and our collaborators to either we'll have a sponsor who says, we don't need it, but we want you to help this other place and we're going to provide the equipment to do that.
That's amazing.
Or they say, we need it too. So for example, New York Central Mutual, who's been a supporter of ours for 33 years through the Heart Walk, they just recently had us come in, and in one day, we taught over 100 people how to do hands-only CPR
Wow. Yeah.
and how to use an AED, which is another whole scary component that most people, because they don't know, they just don't want anything to do with it. We're trying to take that fear away, add a little education, and hopefully, if, God forbid, they're ever in the same situation that I was at the rest area, that they know how to respond.
Yeah, I love that. I didn't realize that was being offered recently, so I think that's
I
phenomenal.
should have brought a
and something
dummy
to
in
share.
for you.
I know. We could
Oh
have.
my gosh.
I was a lifeguard for 7 years, so luckily I
there you go.
do know. I
Yep.
mean, I should probably get re-upped, but
Yep.
Touching on that, I know that we have Go Red, the luncheon coming up.
Yes.
Can we talk a little bit about that? I mean, I know those support the efforts as such something like this. So why don't we touch on that?
I'm going to let Marianne chat about that a little
Perfect.
bit, if you don't mind. Marianne is our development director for the Go Red Luncheon, so I'd love to defer to her.
The Go Red for Women movement is really, it's something I take personal. And it's a story I don't share very often because it's really personal, but my sister-in-law, she is my person, right? Like she's my, in
She's
case
your
of
why.
emergency, she's, I can't even put into words what she is. And she is such an example, especially when we talk about women and how they take care of themselves, and how we, especially mothers, and as a mother, I'm so guilty of this, putting our own stuff aside. I'll take care of it later. I'll take care of it later. I'll take care of it later. Women in general, I hear it all the time. Mothers are not. This comes first. I come second. She had an infection in her tooth, and put it off and put it off and put it off, and it was. I can't tell you how many years ago it was, but it was quite a few years ago, because my youngest niece was still young enough to where my brother had to bring her over because there was something wrong with my sister-in-law. And I went out to the car and I looked at her and I'm like, you need to call 911. This is cardiac. My mother was an ICU nurse. She worked in a nursing home. So like I've been immersed in like cardiac stuff my whole life. Mm-hmm. She developed a rare form of myocarditis and had a 7% chance of survival. I don't get super emotional, but like I can feel it now. I'm not great with like public.
We can move on to
no, because I think it's because it's important, because she had a 7% chance of survival. Yeah. And because of the research that we do here, she's still here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I still have in case of emergency. And so that drives me, I think, more than anything else. Like I have a whole family history. I have a whole multitude of whys. But seeing that made me realize how important, and it's not just this luncheon, it's the Go Red for Women movement in general. Yeah. I think the luncheon is a celebration of that, of the work that we're trying to do throughout the year. Reminding women to take care of their health. Women weren't included in medical research until 1993, which enrages me. Like I won't even get started because we'll hear forever. But the reason why heart disease is the number one killer of women still to this day, more than any cancer combined, is because of that lack of research, because our symptoms are so different than what happened to men. And when people think of heart attacks, I think we still think of it as an old man's disease. Mm-hmm. And the more people I meet, the more women I meet, it is so imperative that is not the case.
And I think this luncheon is just a perfect reminder of that.
Yes. Yeah. Reminding women that, our symptoms come across as sometimes anxiety, indigestion. Yeah. You get, from what I've been told, I haven't experienced it, but you get this level of fatigue. And like, there's a difference between fatigue and just being overtired, right? Yeah. When I think of fatigue, I think of like, you feel like something's weighing you down. Like you could get a million hours of sleep and you still just can't put that one foot in front of the other. Right. So it's those symptoms that are so different that cause women to get misdiagnosed. I want to say almost every survivor speaker I've spoken to at some point had to fight to save her own life, had to fight for that EKG or whatever testing that they need to have done because they knew something was wrong. They knew that it wasn't just indigestion. It wasn't anxiety. Like, you know your body. And so to know that sometimes you have to keep pushing and you have to push back and say, no, something else is wrong. And I think that, like you said, this luncheon is such an important reminder of that, because I think that we forget it often. We forget to take care of ourselves. We forget to pay attention to the signs our body is telling us that something is wrong. Mm-hmm. I'm guilty of that. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm fine. And then you're not fine.
Yeah.
I experienced that in a real way a couple years ago. And so now I'm like, okay, you go through something like that and then you're hyper aware. But I think that we have to have every woman be hyper aware.
Well, and I think, and I can even put, when this is released, like information on joining that luncheon and making sure that they have all the details. But obviously, like, a huge important event for you guys. So we'll make sure we touch on that.
Thank you.
But I did want to, we can bring things up a little bit happier. And sorry, Marianne, I didn't mean to pull at the heartstrings.
No. I think because it's such like that classic story of what we tell women not to do. And so to have that, have someone I care about and respect and love so much go through that, it's important to share those stories.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Because it could happen to anybody.
Anyone.
Anybody can happen to anybody. You could be the picture perfect of health. And if there's a family history issue, and maybe you don't even know that there's a family history issue, you could have a cardiac issue and you wouldn't expect it. And we've had survivor speakers who were the picture perfect of health. And the only driving force behind their heart attack was such extreme stress that it pushed them into a heart attack. So I share stuff like that, even if it makes me uncomfortable, because I think it is so important.
Yeah, no, which makes total sense. And I feel like you're supporting a mission that should. I mean, you have to have the emotion behind it. But I have done moving on to something a little happier.
I'm not usually the one that brings it down, so
no. We'll spice it up a little bit. I do a lightning round with everyone that comes on, just like something fun. So these are one-word answers, and so we'll do this as like our close. But I wanted to make it heart related. So starting off,
very cute.
Heart healthy snack. What's your favorite one?
I am a huge, I know it's supposed to be one word, but like Greek yogurt.
Love it.
Love it.
Celery.
Ooh, okay. Favorite way to get your steps in?
Every morning, walking meetings.
Yes, I forgot you do that. That's perfect.
Taking my kids on walks.
How many hours of sleep do you try to get? I know. Don't even.
8 to 10. I know where I survive and I know where I thrive. And to me, sleep is very important, and research bears that out.
I'm going to be honest. If I can clock 5, it's a good night.
Yeah, me too. Unfortunately, me too.
I can't even lie.
Healthy habit you are proud of?
Working out every day.
Constantly, being in constant contact with like my doctor and making sure I'm getting that annual checkup. It's so important.
Okay, yeah, I like that. Your favorite way to relieve stress?
Reading.
Same. Reading, yeah.
Or wine.
Speaking of, heart health in one word.
Peaceful. And by that I mean like trying to find that inner peace, find that calm, manage that stress, live by healthy habits, just find that harmony.
Oh, that's a hard one. I think well-being.
I like that.
Just
That's perfect.
In general, because so much your well-being so much encompasses heart health.
A stroke warning.
A drooping face.
Slurred speech.
One word to describe why you do this for work.
Because I have to. And not from a financial standpoint, but because I feel compelled.
I love that.
My kids. I have a chronic illness that makes me 2 times more likely for heart disease. So my goal is to be here on this earth for my children as long as humanly possible.
Absolutely.
And doing this work is what makes that possible.
Yeah, well, that's a perfect way to end. So thank you, Marianne. But I do want you guys to give a little information to listeners. How can they get in touch with you, especially if they want to do the CPR, the CPR training, whether it's at their workplace or whatever that looks like. So how can people stay in touch with Heart Association and get in contact with you too?
Yeah, absolutely. The email is the best way, heather.evans@heart.org. It couldn't be an easier email address. Reach out, let's connect. I'm happy to sit down with anyone and everyone. And I'm really excited to be able to have the opportunity to do that.
Also email. However, mine is not as easy to
No, it is
remember
not.
because Marianne.Hagadorn is a mouthful.
Morgan Malnicki. That's
Yeah.
why we made my email Morgan at.
well, and two, like I like the way I spell my first name too. So it's
I can put it in the caption.
put that on the
but-
screen.
Morgan, can I offer a little teaser for what our theme for the Heart Walk
Yes,
is
I
next
would love
year?
that. Yes, please.
So we have a new chair coming in, as you know, from the Heart Walk. We transitioned and Frank gracefully passed the torch. I just bought 2 cars from him on Saturday.
Two? Both sons?
2. No, myself and my husband.
Oh,
If you've
nice.
ever seen the minivan, you know it was time. But
So what did you get?
I got a Hyundai Tucson hybrid. It is so zippy and I'm
Nice.
so excited. And my husband got like this souped up Honda CRV. But it was a fantastic
So
experience.
that was an expensive weekend.
It was an expensive weekend. I did not play it cool. My husband said, play it cool before we go in there. And I walked in and the sales guy came up and said, what can we do for you today? And I said, we're not leaving without 2 cars. Wasn't cool at all. It was
your
the
husband was
exact,
probably like,
it was like daggers. Like, what is wrong with you? This is not how you negotiate. But Frank has been such a great partner for 3 years. He's really tied to the mission. So it was wonderful to be able to kind of give back
back
and,
to him. Absolutely.
work with him on that. But he graciously handed that torch over to Kristen Bergois, who's going to take over as executive chair next year. And our theme for the Heart Walk, and not just the Utica Heart Walk, but I also oversee the North Country, Central New York, and the Southern Tier, is going to be what we call Recess Reboot. And the idea when we talk about like well-being, that being that one word, is really helping kids find ways to live healthier lifestyles at a young age. So Recess Reboot is going to help put PE equipment into schools in need.
I love this theme.
I'm super excited about it. I'm seeing ball drives at companies who maybe can't sponsor, but still want to be part of it. I'm so jazzed up about it. So I just wanted to share because we are already starting to plan.
Yeah.
But I really think it's going to make a big difference. And I'm hoping to impact at least 15 schools across Oneida County, Mohawk Valley area.
Perfect. Well, thank you.
Like I said, I love anything we do with the school, so I am super excited about this too. Because again, as a parent whose kids are, well, 2 of them are still relatively on the younger side, being able to see that impact real time in these schools, I think is going to be so awesome. Like I can't wait to see where we end up next year. I'm
I
really
think
excited.
this is perfect.
Yeah, so you heard it here first.
I love it. Well, thank you guys, and thank you for that little sneak peek.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate you guys coming on, and we'll have to do one after like all the happenings and do a little
Sounds
report
good.
back.
We'll see you at the Go Red Luncheon.
We'll see you there.
All
Thank
right.
you for joining me.
Thank you.